you actually touched on it quite a bit. But I want to hear from you, and then we haven't really heard from Dom too much on your guys' Zelda impression. So if you guys can give us those, give us a rundown of
So I got some
Zelda's
notes.
treating you guys.
A couple quick hits. I'll just run through these of things I liked, and then there's actually one thing I didn't like. So, of course, first off, it looks so good. It looks absolutely good. The art style is fantastic. Even when it's 720p on a tiny little Switch screen, it still looks great. That's not really a surprise. Next thing, the greater emphasis on exploration instead of like quest lines. That to me is like by far like what this does best. Even when there are quests, very seldom do they actually give you like a quest marker on the map. They usually just tell you if you look up that mountain between those two trees, there's something cool that has to do with something else. They give you vague guidelines, and I've never like seen that successfully done with any other game. So that's really cool. And then of course there's the stuff along the way that like you just get distracted by.
This game's really good about as opposed to holding your hand, just kind of pushing you in the right direction.
Yeah, it does that fantastically.
Kind of like a parent teaching you how to swim, where it's like you have to kick your feet and you have to push your arms and all that, but they're kind of helping you along.
Anytime you're going somewhere, like finding stuff along the way is just, it's fantastic. Everything feels so good about exploring. Like the name of the game, I think, couldn't be more, it couldn't correspond more. It's like Breath of the Wild. That's like exactly what this game feels like. And then to add to that, I mean, it's been said by everyone and their brothers, but the towers are fantastic, and any of the high points in the game, it's not Assassin's Creed where you get to the top of the tower and then push a button and then a bunch of little marks appear on your map. Like you actually climb the tower and look around and see and mark stuff yourself and see if that's where you want to go and what could be there. And it doesn't feel like it's too difficult or too hard to do that. Like it makes you like interested every time you're on a high point, a mountain or a tower. Like you want to like mark that stuff and then go there.
Well, and they're great for gliding off of too. But also they're actual. There's a lot of the towers that are puzzles to get to the top of,
where they're blocked, where they're
that are fun puzzles
blocked with that purple goo, and you gotta like. I'm not even gonna spoil it, but yeah, you're right. A lot of the towers are actually puzzles just to get up.
Have you been to the one where you have to stack boxes?
There was two. I think I had to do that, and one where I had to do something else. I won't say what though. And then jumping off that, the shrines and all the puzzles, even the dungeons, although they're short and kind of the bosses are sort of underwhelming, the dungeons themselves and all the shrines are super creative. Like this is like Portal level puzzle design. Like they're that good, just in smaller chunks. So those are fantastic and a great twist on what the series has been doing, and I think games in general. Next point, the collectibles, all of them have a purpose. Until, after so many of the Korok seeds, you don't have a purpose to get all 900 of them. But after that, all the monster guts, the chunks of whatever, the bat wings, everything else, it goes towards something. I don't want to say everything, and spoil it all, but it all has a really cool purpose one way or another. Talked about the puzzles. The physics engine is just like, and just the way everything works exactly how you think it will is really cool. The electricity,
it's cool, man.
They created this world and they gave you these rules, and everything follows those rules exactly as you expect. It's the coolest thing. It's hard to explain, but that's the best I can do.
Very fun to play with the physics engine.
And I can't think of a game that does the same thing. I mean, maybe Portal, but it's still not. There's not as much variation to that.
Stuff like Just Cause 3, games that are really pushing you to play with that stuff. Force Unleashed, stuff like that.
So I talked about the collectibles. The weapon durability at first is annoying, but it gets.
I know, I hate it, dude. I fucking hate it.
I mean, for me, I hated it at first, but it gets really cool. It makes you start to use different weapons, especially when you get a couple extra slots in your inventory for weapons. You start to like it because you find so many weapons, and it's like you're automatically upgrading, but you're also upgrading like different kinds of weapons. So, I like it contrast to like Dark Souls, where I find one good sword, and then it's so costly to upgrade in Dark Souls that you end up using just the one sword the entire game, even though there's so many different weapons. So I felt like it was kind of a good contrast to that. I really liked that. And I'm still finding new and different types of weapons. It forces you to experiment in that sense. I think that was everything I had. The one thing I didn't like, and this is the controversial bit. I still prefer the the areas that are locked off until you get a certain item. As of art, right.
Oh, kind of a Metroidvania vibe.
In this game, I don't think it's a spoiler to say, like, you get all the items and the ways you're going to interact with the world right off the bat in the tutorial. You get everything. You don't get a hook shot midway through the game that lets you do a completely new mechanic. That doesn't exist here. And, you can get to anywhere in the world immediately, given that you're strong enough or you have enough stamina. You can get anywhere always. That can be a good thing, and I don't know. Most people are finding it a good thing. I kind of wish that they blended it a little more with the old style Zelda, where, especially in the dungeons, that's my favorite part about the dungeons is being able to, in old Zelda games, being able to unlock new parts of the dungeons and do different things based on the weapon you found. So that I go back and forth.
I will say there are some parts, like, you can't, like, super, super cold or super hot areas. You have to have certain gear and stuff or you'll just immediately die. Just saying that you can't just, like, hop in to every single place.
That's true. I mean, you'd have to go and get the gear, make the food that helps you in those areas. Right.
The warm doublet and all that.
What do you got?
Yeah. So, yeah, as I stated at the beginning of the show, I love the game. I think it isn't quite this legendary masterpiece that everyone's making it out to be. I think it's the first great mainline Zelda game in a long time, and so people are really hungry for that, and that's why I think it got such high ratings. You said you think it looks really good. I think it looks okay. I think the art style is pretty cool with it's a weird style of cell shading, the 3D cell shading animation. I don't know what you call it, but that part's okay. It's mostly the environmental textures. There's some real rough textures in there, and I get that this game's on the Wii U, but I mean, Wii U has plenty of beautiful games running at 1080p, so and I understand it's a big open world, but there are just some spots where I'll be flying over this wooded area with my paraglider, and I'm just like, whoa, those textures on the ground down there almost look like in 64 era, like, just crappy. Obviously not that bad, I'm exaggerating, but just really poor. And so it's definitely taking away from the game, because coming off of Horizon, Dom, you said Breath of the Wild is a great name for this game, and it is. I think it has a really good grip on the feeling of nature, but I'm like, the real Breath of the Wild, in my opinion, is Horizon. Like, when I'm playing Horizon, I almost feel like I'm in the woods with Aloy. Like, I feel like I can smell the grass, and I know that's kind of a cliche. People say that a lot, but it really, Horizon feels so immersive. And yeah, I get I'm playing it on a PS4 Pro and 4K, and Zelda is on obviously a much lower powered console, but it just sucks that Nintendo, I would have loved to paid $400 for a Switch, and I think plenty of people would have paid $400 for a Switch, and it could have been at least running this stuff at 1080 and having sharper edges, and those textures would be a little bit better, because I get that this was a Wii U game, but I'm not thinking that if we get another Zelda at the end of the Switch life cycle, I don't think it'll look that much better than this. So I don't want to focus too much on graphics, even though it seems I already have. But anyways, another big complaint is the horse stuff. So I think the horse riding is just rocky. It's just rough around the edges. I think they try to make it feel more natural, to where if you're going at super fast speeds, then you have less control over the horse, which makes sense in theory, but it's one of those things like people were talking about with The Last Guardian, where it's like, well, you're trying to control this dog and you really can't control an animal, so that's why the controls are so hard. And I just don't think that's a good excuse, and I think it's not a good excuse here either. I wish that comparing it to Witcher 3, for example, where I played hundreds of hours of that game and spent tons of it on the horse, going through all these lush environments with tons of trees sticking out of the ground. And CD Projekt Red did a very smart thing by saying, okay, half of this stuff you're just going to fade through anyways because it's just a tiny twig. It doesn't need to stop you right where you are. And then the bigger tree trunks, obviously you can't just run through those. But unfortunately, since Nintendo likes to have such a polish on their games, that was never going to be the case. So it seems like every tiny little thing you start to run up to, the horse just stops in place. And I'm like, Jesus, dude, it's like a rock or something. Like, chill out. And it just makes that experience really rough. And then furthermore, branching off of that, also a part of the horse part of the game are the stables, which they're essentially towers, but only for the horse. Basically what it does is you have to go to these stables, and basically once you walk up and talk to them, then it's unlocked, and that means that you can go to that stable and grab your registered horse, whoever it may be. But basically, if I open the stable up on the north part of the map, and then I run down to the south part of the map and I'm doing stuff, and I hit the button to whistle for Epona, well then she's not going to be able to find me. It's going to give a notification that she can't get to me because I'm not near enough to that stable. So I have to go around the entire world and unlock every individual stable so that any place in the world that I need to call my horse, I can get access to her, which, comparing it to Witcher, in The Witcher, you hit the button and your horse is right there. It calls. And sure, Roach might end up on top of a roof or something funny, goofy like that. But when you're on the horse, the riding's really smooth and it's easy to roam around the world. And yeah, I don't have to unlock these essentially horse towers, so that I have access to my horse everywhere around the world. Really, really rough part of the game right there, I think. I think they really screwed that up. So, moving on to shrines. I think shrines are fucking fantastic. I love the shrines. They're these not mini puzzles. I mean, some of them will take you a little chunk of time, but wow, are they fun, man. Like you said, they're portal level. They give you all the tools. They really do. And some of them, there's a couple that are pretty obtuse. It is Zelda at the end of the day. But I think for the most part, you can walk into a room. Like Dom said, you have all the powers from pretty much the end of the tutorial. And so you can kind of just look at your set of tools and look at the room and just start working your brain power. And you can eventually get to the solution relatively quickly because there's so many of them that you're not meant to be spending so much time on these puzzles like you would in older Zelda temples and dungeons. So I think that they work really well, very fun, and it's like really great brain food, I guess is the best way to put it. And like I said, some of the towers even are puzzles. Finding Korok seeds are little tiny puzzles. Lots of environmental puzzles in this game. Lots of ways that they shove puzzles in here that you think would be like, I don't want another puzzle, but it's just, they're so smartly done and they're so fun to do that you love doing them. And so I think that's one of the strongest suits of the game easily. I think the combat, somebody's been playing some Souls games, Dom, because I'm getting major Bloodborne and Souls vibes from just the way combat feels. Obviously, it's not nearly as difficult, though this isn't an easy cakewalk of a game. But I definitely feel like these guys have played plenty of Souls before they finish this game.
Overall, though, you're good with it?
Finishing up. Finishing up, I think, like I said, I love this game. I think this is easily one of my favorite Zeldas. I would say it was a toss-up for me between Twilight Princess and Wind Waker before this. Wind Waker probably lost out because I had only played the original version, which had the Triforce Quest, which was way too long and bullshit. And so maybe if I played the Wii U version, I would enjoy it more because they took that out. That's how bad it was. They edited that shit out. So yeah, this is a great Zelda game, and it makes me want to go back and play more Zelda because I can tell that they've, taken a lot. This is kind of the Force Awakens of Zelda, where they're taking the pieces and they're putting it, kind of rebooting it for a new age or reimagining, if you will. And kind of, it seems like there's a lot of callbacks to previous Zelda worlds, and you can look at this place and say, oh yeah, I've been here in a different Zelda game and it wasn't all run down or whatever. Temple of Time being an example there. So yeah, very cool game, and I'm sure I'll have more thoughts. Maybe we'll even do like spoiler talk once Jared gets his hands on it and Dom and I've finished it up. But yeah, it's a lovely game, though I do think that it's not quite as good as maybe like its Metacore or Metacritic score would say. So for me, I think I like Horizon a little bit better, but I fucking love Zelda.